Well, we're on the precipice of the Triple Crown finishing this weekend here at Belmont Park with the Belmont Stakes. A lot of interesting things going on in this Belmont, a lot of horses to talk about, including the Preakness winner and Forte as well, who's coming back after having been scratched before the Kentucky Derby. The best way to play the Belmont Stakes, all the races, is Naira Bets. Head on over to Naira Bets. If you're not a member, no better time than present to sign up. Use the promo code Belmont25. Not only will we match you with $200 of your initial deposit, we will also give you a free $25 bet on the Belmont Stakes. And talking about Forte, he has to be the first horse to talk about this race. He's the morning line favorite. In all likelihood, he will be the favorite in here. Perhaps the other Todd Pletcher horse, Tapit Trice, will vie for favoritism. And Forte, well, he's been excellent in his career. Only one race did he not finish first. That was his second career start, and he runs well every time. And listen, if you're the Connections, that'd be frustrating to watch Mage win the Kentucky Derby after Forte had beaten him in 2 straight starts, including his last, and this was the Florida Derby. But a few things to say about Forte. Obviously, he has shown consistency and he's shown talent. But for me, he is the horse to bet against in this Belmont Stakes. First of all, I didn't really like his race in the Florida Derby. I thought that Mage actually ran the better race, having had some trouble in there, making an earlier move, and Forte got the usual great ride from Irad Ortiz. I also don't like how much Irad had to ride him that day. Another problem I have is I don't really know that he's a horse that was originally or necessarily considered a Belmont Stakes type horse. Obviously, had he won the first 2 legs of the Triple Crown, he would have been here trying for the Triple Crown. But it didn't happen. And after the Kentucky Derby situation, Todd Pletcher had said they'd like to run the Preakness if they could, but he had mentioned that if he didn't, they'd probably wait for Saratoga. So ends up showing up the Belmont Stakes at a 12-furlong distance that, in my opinion, is very, very questionable for him. The other thing about him is he hasn't raced now in 10 weeks. Now, he really didn't miss any training, maybe a day around the Kentucky Derby, but for the most part, he's been training consistently and he's been training well. I'm just not sure the Belmont Stakes is going to be the right race for him, despite the fact that Todd Pletcher has an incredible record in this race with 4 wins, multiple second-place finishes, big prices, outrunning their odds. Todd understands what it takes to win the Belmont Stakes, but many people, myself included, think if he does win this Belmont Stakes, he's going to do it with this horse, and that's Tapit Trice. And we'll go back 2 races and take a look at him winning in the Bluegrass Stakes. And this was the best race he's ever run. Tapit Trice is a tricky horse. He doesn't break that sharply. He has to be ridden to get into position. He's a bit of a quirky horse. But his talent is there, and as a son of Tapit, he's obviously going to handle the distance. And he's very much, in my opinion, the horse to beat in here. The problem that I have is he's not going to be a very good price. He could be favored. He won't be worse than second choice, I should say. And he's coming out of a Kentucky Derby where he really did not run well. If you look at the race, Mage, Angel of Empire is back in this Belmont Stakes, and Tapit Trice were all in similar positions early. They were all well back in the field. He did not put in a run whatsoever. And with that fast pace, if you knew beforehand, you would have thought he was certainly going to be somewhere at the finish, and he really never made a move. So to take him at a short price near off that effort is a bit concerning to me. Having said that, I still consider him the horse to beat. Another horse I won't be using here is National Treasure. As much respect as I have for Bob Baffert's runners, I think this Preakness win we're looking at here is a subpar win in a big race. This was not a particularly strong field, but more importantly, it featured an incredibly slow pace, one that hindered the Derby winner Mage and very much helped National Treasure. And with the addition of Tapit shoes, we'll talk about a bit in this race, there's going to be more speed in this race. So I don't see National Treasure loping along on the front end. I'm not really convinced he's a horse that wants 12 furlongs anyway, and I'm also far from convinced he's actually good enough to win this race. I respect Bob Baffert's horses always. I just don't think that National Treasure is the one you want in this Belmont Stakes. The number 14 in the Kentucky Derby, Angel of Empire, and the one Hit Show are interesting horses to talk about. I am interested in both of these horses. Now, Angel of Empire finished 3rd. We already talked about the trip he got, the fast pace to close into. And unlike Mage, who won the race, Mage made a decisive move around the 5/16 to 3/8 pole. Well, Angel of Empire just didn't have the acceleration of Mage. And while he ran a respectable race finishing 3rd, he had everything go his own way, and he still wasn't able to get it done. It doesn't mean he can't win this race. He obviously can win the Belmont Stakes. And the addition of Tapit shoes gives him more speed. But the horse that I'm more interested in out of the Derby is Hit Show, and we'll go from Hit Show's Kentucky Derby to his 2nd place finish in the Wood Memorial, and I think Hit Show is one of those interesting horses, and we can show that Wood as well while we talk about him, that has run better than it looks in both of his last two races. In the Derby, he was a length and a half to 2 lengths behind Two Phils. Two Phils ran a remarkable race in the Derby. But Hit Show is the one horse that was forwardly placed in that Kentucky Derby that is coming back in the Belmont Stakes. And he ran a respectable race, finishing just 6¼ lengths behind the winner and only about 5 lengths behind, a little less than 5 lengths, Angel of Empire. But Angel of Empire took advantage of the pace. And Hit Show was right on top of the pace, so I thought he ran extremely well. You look at the Wood Memorial. Because he drew that outside post, he had to be forced into the race early. He had to be used perhaps earlier than he wanted to get the points he needed for the Derby. So he's coming this race having run better, in my opinion, than his finishes look in those races, and that's going to increase his betting value. And at the end of the day, big race, small race, you're looking for value, and I believe that Hit Show is going to provide that value in the Belmont Stakes. Let's take a look at Arcangelo winning the Peter Pan. He is not in my top 4 picks, but he very well could have been, and I'm not going to be surprised when he's effective in here. He has a pedigree to suggest he should have no problem with the 12 furlongs, and he really came alive winning a maiden race impressively 2 starts back. He ended up being the second choice in the Peter Pan, and he ran like it, winning a hard-fought battle with Bishop's Bay, who's a very promising and lightly raced runner for Brad Cox. To me, Arcangelo is kind of the wild card here, the unknown factor. How good is he really? His trainer, Jenna Antonucci, on the 30th anniversary of Julie Crone winning the Belmont Stakes Colonial Fair, she's trying to become the first female trainer, woman trainer, to win this Belmont Stakes, and she has brought a good horse here. Whether or not he's up to the challenge in this Belmont Stakes, or whether or not we'll see more from him over the summer in the bigger races, remains to be seen. But don't fall asleep on Arcangelo, and let's talk about Red Route 1 and Tappet Shoes as well. Tappet Shoes is here probably to inject some pace in the race for Brad Cox's runner, though he is a Tappet, and should handle the distance. And he actually ran the best race in the Bathhouse Row at Oaklawn because he attacked a fast pace that fell apart. But there came Red Route 1 making that big, huge run from the back of the pack. And Red Route 1 is not a horse I'm inclined to really be in love with, but he didn't run that badly in the Preakness, where because of the slow pace, he had to be much, much closer. In fact, he was closer to lead than Mage at one point in the backstretch, and he really actually ran probably the best race he's ever run. And it's hard not to notice that he's a full brother to a horse that's running earlier today in the Brooklyn, and that horse improved dramatically at 1.5 miles in his last start in the dirt. So maybe Red Route 1's a horse that's improving at the right time, and he's going to improve with distance. So I'll throw him in somewhere. My top pick in here, the number 7 Hit Show. I put him on top of Tappet Trice, the number 2. The number 9 horse, Red Route 1, is my 3rd choice, and Angel of Empire, my 4th choice over Arcangelo. But I like Hit Show in this Belmont Stakes. I think he's going to provide value, and I believe he's a horse that is better than his recent efforts may make him look to some. Best way to play the Belmont Stakes? As always, playing all the races over at NYRA Head on over to NYRABets.com, use the promo code Belmont25, and we'll match the $200 of your initial deposit and give you a free $25 bet on this Belmont Stakes.